This is the video for 3-3, Solving Inequalities, continued. There was no vocabulary, however, I did say before watching the video, answer the following question. What do you remember from last year about multiplying or dividing an inequality by a negative number? And the answer is, you flip the sign. But let's talk about why. I want to make sure you understand why you're flipping the sign. As the algebra becomes more and more complex, it's going to become more important that you understand why you're doing what you're doing. We want to go beyond just getting the answer, and we want to move into understanding what we're doing. So if I have 8 and 4, for example, I would say that 8 is greater than 4. But what happens if I multiply both sides by a negative number? Negative 8 and negative 4. Let's say I multiplied both sides by negative 1. What happens now? Now, the negative 4 becomes the larger value. I flipped the sign. The reason I flip the sign once I multiply or divide both sides by a negative number is because I have just changed which side contains the greater value. So let's look at division. It's the same thing. So let me take my 8 and 4 example again. I have 8 and 4, and 8 is greater than 4. Well, let's divide both sides by negative 2. I'm going to divide both sides by negative 2. So I have negative 4 and negative 2. So which side contains the larger value? So you can see once again I flipped the sign. Again, I flipped the sign because I've just changed which side contains the greater value. Once you multiply or divide by a negative number, you're changing which side contains the greater value. That's super important that you understand why you're flipping the sign. Don't just flip the sign, understand what you're doing. Okay, so solving inequalities with multiplication and division. So I want to get the x by itself. So I'm going to multiply both sides by a positive 3. But since I'm multiplying both sides by a positive number, I'm not flipping the sign. There is no sign flippage. So it's just x is less than negative 6. And let's go ahead and practice more problems where we are creating an inequality from a situation. So you walk dogs in your neighborhood and you earn $5.20 per dog. How many dogs do you need to walk in order to earn at least $75? Again, I know you've solved problems like this in real life in your head, and I know you know how to do this just logically, but we're trying to create an inequality that describes this situation. So this I want to earn at least, this at least sentence here or comment tells me I'm going to be dealing with that sign. Why? Because whatever this is has to be greater than or equal to 75. Because I want whatever this is to be at least $75. So now what's my situation? I'm going to earn $5.20 per dog. So let's define my variable, and we'll call x the number of dogs that we're walking. And every time I walk a dog, I earn $5.20. So there's my inequality that describes the situation. 5.20, or you can just say 5.2x, is greater than or equal to 75. So then how do I find out how many dogs I need to walk in order to earn at least $75? I'm going to divide both sides by 5.2. And when I do that, 75 divided by 5.2 is 14.4 approximately. 4, 2, 3, So x has to be greater than or equal to 14.4 dogs. I have to walk at least 14.4 dogs. Well, now let's think about this logically. This does not pass a sanity check. I can't walk 0.4 dogs. But if I rounded this to 14, that wouldn't be enough because I don't hit $75 until I walk 14.4 dogs. If I just said X has to be greater than or equal to 14, that wouldn't give me enough money because I don't make $75 until I hit at least 0.4 dogs. So that means in order to get $75, I have to walk at least 15 dogs. Okay? And again, if you're not sure why I didn't round this to 14, plug 14 back in and see. Actually, let's do that. So $5.20 times 14. At 14 dogs, I would have only made $72.80. That's not enough. So I have to round to 15 to make it make sense. It's not just get the answer, it has to make sense. Okay, so now pause the video and solve these two on your own problems. Okay, so I'm going to solve by I'm going to isolate my variable. So I want to multiply both sides by 8, and when I do so, I get C is greater than 8 over 4, C is greater than 2. When you're doing these on your own, if you get any wrong, you need to redo it. Make sure you understand what you did, and then make sure you understand what you did wrong, and then redo it. A case of vegetables costs $10.68. You can spend at most $50. How many cases can you buy? So if I can spend at most $50, that means whatever this is has to be less than or equal to 50. Because I cannot spend more than $50, at most $50. So now what's my situation? Each case cost $10.68. So here my variable is going to represent the number of cases. So $10.68 times X, where X is my number of cases, has to be less than or equal to 50 because it's going to be at most $50. So it's less than or equal to. So that's my situation. So how do I solve? I divide both sides by $10.68. So 50 divided by $10.68 is going to be X has to be less than or equal to 4.68. Okay, now wait a second. You cannot buy 0.68 cases. But I can't round this to 5 because if I round it to 5, I would have spent too much money. So that means I can only buy 4 cases and I'll have a little change left over in my pocket. Because what happens if I buy 5 cases? This doesn't make sense. You can't buy 0.68 cases. And if I round that to 5, I would have $10.68 times 5. I would have spent $53.40. That's too much. I only have 50. But if I buy 4, $10.68 times 4, I would have spent $42.72. And then I have some change left over. So you have to make sure your values make sense and plug them back in to check to make sure they make sense. 4.68 doesn't make sense. I can't buy 0.68 cases. If I rounded it to 5, that would be too much. Plug it in and see how that would be too much. So I can only buy 4 cases. Applying that common sense is going to become more and more important the further you go down the line in algebra. Okay, so now we're going to be multiplying and dividing by a negative number. I want to isolate my variable, so I'm going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal. When I do so, I need to flip the sign. Why? I need to flip the sign. Why do I need to flip the sign? Because I just multiplied both sides by a negative number. So go ahead and flip the sign first. Then go ahead and finish solving. So this becomes 1w is less than or equal to, those cross cancel. You can put that over 1 if it helps you to see it. -4. Because I multiplied by a negative number, I need to flip the sign. And finally here, I'm going to divide both sides by a negative number. Because I divided both sides by a negative number, I need to flip the sign. Flip the sign first. Write the sign down flipped. That becomes 1y and -7. Okay, go ahead and hit pause and work out these on your own. Here I need to multiply both sides by a -3. Those cross cancel. I'm going to be flipping the sign because I need to multiply both sides by a negative number. So let me flip the sign now before I forget. And here I'm going to divide both sides by a negative number. Again, let me flip the sign now before I forget. Okay, so watch the video on 3-4 before you do your homework.